The blue-skinned alien known as Observer Gray stared at his display screen in growing horror. His tentacles trembled as he watched another recording from the primitive planet called Earth. The beings there were engaged in what appeared to be a ritual combat inside a roped square platform, striking each other with wrapped fists until one fell unconscious. "Director White," Observer Gray called out, his voice shaking. "You need to see this immediately." Director White glided across the observation deck of the Galactic Council's border scanning station. His four eyes blinked in sequence as he watched the recording continue. Now it showed different humans in protective gear smashing into each other while fighting over an oval-shaped ball. "By the ancient stars," Director White whispered, "how long has this been going on?" "According to our scans, these combat rituals happen constantly across their entire planet," Observer Gray reported. "They call them sports and martial arts. But that's not the worst part, Director. Look at their historical records." The screen shifted to show scenes from Earth's past. Armies clashing with swords, knights charging on horses, cannons firing, tanks rolling across battlefields, and massive ships launching flying machines that dropped explosive devices. Their entire history is filled with warfare, Observer Gray continued. They've had 2 planet-wide wars in just the last century. And look at their entertainment. The display showed clips from action movies, car chases, explosions, fight scenes, and battle sequences. To the aliens' untrained eyes, unable to distinguish fiction from reality, it all looked like documentation of actual events. "They glorify combat," Director White said, his color paling to a sickly white-gray. "They train their young for war through these sports. They preserve memories of battles in their entertainment. Even their peaceful moments seem to be merely preparation for more fighting." "What should we do, Director?" "They haven't achieved faster-than-light travel yet, but our calculations show they're less than 50 years from developing it." Director White straightened to his full height, his tentacles rigid with determination. "We must call an emergency meeting of the Galactic Council. We cannot risk letting such a fierce warrior race loose in the galaxy, not when they spend their entire lives training for combat and celebrating violence." 3 days later, in the Great Crystal Chamber of the Galactic Council on Capital World, representatives from 500 peaceful civilizations gathered to discuss the Earth situation. The chamber hummed with nervous conversation as Director White presented his findings. "As you can see," he concluded, showing a final clip of a human martial arts tournament, "these beings engage in combat for entertainment. Their young are trained in warfare from an early age. Their history is an unbroken chain of conflicts. We cannot risk allowing them to join galactic society." The council leader, an ancient being of pure energy contained within a crystalline shell, pulsed with concern. "What do you propose, Director?" "A quarantine barrier around their entire solar system," Director White replied firmly. "We have the technology to create an undetectable field that will prevent faster-than-light travel into or out of their system. We can keep them contained until we better understand their violent nature." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The gathered representatives, all from species that had evolved beyond violence thousands or even millions of years ago, couldn't comprehend a race that seemed to thrive on combat. "Let us vote," the council leader announced. "All in favor of establishing a quarantine around the Sol system." The chamber lit up with thousands of glowing tentacles, appendages, and energy signatures raised in agreement. The vote was unanimous. "Then it is decided," the council leader declared. "Earth and its humans will be quarantined for the safety of the galaxy. We will establish an observation post to monitor them. And perhaps someday we will find a way to help them overcome their violent nature." As the council dispersed, none of them realized their fundamental mistake. They hadn't discovered a simple warrior race. They had found something far more complex, a species capable of both great violence and profound peace, whose apparent love of combat was matched only by their capacity for compassion and protection. The quarantine field went up silently, undetected by Earth's instruments. Humanity continued its daily life, unaware that they had been judged and isolated by a galactic community that feared what they did not understand. For now, Earth remained alone among the stars, quarantined for being too dangerous to join the galactic family. But this was only the beginning of humanity's journey toward proving their true nature to the cosmos. 6 months after the quarantine began, a sleek silver spacecraft approached Earth's orbit. Inside, the most experienced diplomatic team in the Galactic Council shifted nervously in their seats. Their mission was simple but dangerous: make first contact with the warrior race and assess their threat level up close. Lead alien Ambassador Green, known for solving conflicts across 12 star systems, checked his universal translator one final time. "Remember," he told his team, "these humans are dangerous. They could attack at any moment. Stay alert." The human governments had detected their approach and, following standard protocols, arranged a meeting at a neutral location, the International Space Station. The diplomatic team was surprised when they received a calm, welcoming message from Earth's chosen representative, Tom Baker, a middle-aged diplomat from the United Nations. "He seems peaceful," Assistant Ambassador Blue remarked, studying Tom's profile. "Perhaps it's a trick." "Their warriors are known to be clever," Green replied. "Notice how he doesn't wear any visible armor or weapons. Very suspicious." The team docked with the space station, their hearts racing as the airlock cycled. When the door opened, they found themselves face to face with Tom Baker, who smiled warmly and extended his hand. "Welcome to Earth," Tom said. "We're honored to host representatives from an advanced civilization." The aliens flinched at the extended hand, their cultural database indicating it was a common starting position for human combat moves. Tom quickly lowered his hand, realizing his mistake. "My apologies," he said. "I forget that handshakes might not be universal. Please, follow me to the conference room." As they floated through the station, Ambassador Green noticed exercise equipment in one module. His translator picked up the word treadmill. "You even have combat training equipment in your space station?" he asked, horrified. Tom looked confused. "That's just for exercise. In zero gravity, our muscles." Yes, Green interrupted, "maintaining fighting strength. We understand." The meeting room was simple: a table bolted to the floor, several chairs, and a view of Earth through a large window. As they settled in, Green's team pulled out their data tablets. "We have been observing your planet," Green began, "and we are concerned about your species' violent tendencies." Tom blinked in surprise. "Violent tendencies?" Indeed. Green projected several images into the air: a football game, a boxing match, and military parade. "Your entire society appears built around combat training." Tom tried not to laugh, which the aliens interpreted as a threatening display of teeth. "There seems to be a misunderstanding. These aren't combat training. They're sports and ceremonies." "Sports?" Assistant Blue asked, making notes. "You mean combat simulations?" "No, they're games. Entertainment. The military parade is ceremonial, showing respect for those who protect us." The aliens exchanged worried glances. This human was clearly trying to downplay their warrior culture. Just then, a tablet showed breaking news from Earth: a mixed martial arts championship. "Look," Ambassador Green pointed accusingly. "Two of your warriors battle even now, in front of cheering crowds." Tom rubbed his forehead. This was going to be a long day. "That's a sporting event. It's voluntary competition between trained athletes. They follow strict rules to ensure safety." "Rules in combat?" Green seemed genuinely confused. "Why restrict effective killing techniques?" "Because the goal isn't to kill," Tom explained patiently. "It's to demonstrate skill, discipline, and sportsmanship." The aliens huddled together, speaking in whispers. This was worse than they'd imagined. These humans were so dedicated to warfare, they had developed complex rituals around it, turning combat into public entertainment. "We have seen enough," Green announced. You claim peace while your people train constantly for war. Your children play war games. Your adults engage in ritual combat. Even your peaceful moments seem merely preparation for violence. You're misinterpreting everything, Tom protested. Humanity isn't just about. The quarantine will remain in place, Green declared, for the safety of the galaxy. As the alien delegation prepared to leave, Tom watched them with a mixture of frustration and amusement. How could he explain that human nature wasn't just about fighting? That what they saw as violence was often sport, art, or celebration. The silver spacecraft detached from the station, carrying away a diplomatic team more convinced than ever that humans were too dangerous to join galactic society. They never realized that their own fear was more dangerous than any human warrior ritual they'd observed. Back on the station, Tom began drafting his report, wondering how humanity could ever prove its true nature to a galactic community that saw only what it feared to see. Observer Yellow sat in the monitoring station above Earth, his tentacles twitching as he watched the streams of human entertainment broadcasts. After the diplomatic mission's disturbing report, the Council had assigned him to study human media to better understand their warrior culture. Director White, he called out, his voice shaking. I've discovered something terrible. Their battle documentation system called Netflix is full of combat records. Director White glided over, all four eyes fixed on the screen showing the human action movie. On the display, a lone human was fighting against 20 others in what appeared to be an impossible battle. How can one warrior defeat so many? Director White wondered, his color shifting to pale gray in concern. Their combat abilities are even more advanced than we feared. Yellow switched to another channel showing a horror movie. The aliens watched in terror as a masked figure stalked through dark corridors. They even record their stealth killing techniques, Yellow whispered. And look at this. The screen changed to show a group of teenagers playing a video game. The game showed realistic combat scenarios with weapons and explosions. They train their young through these interactive battle simulations, Director White noted grimly. From such an early age. In another part of the monitoring station, Observer Red was analyzing something called YouTube. His report was equally disturbing. They'd broadcast their combat techniques freely. Red announced, look at these gaming channels where they share strategies for their war simulations, and these movie trailers advertising new battle documentation. The observation team gathered for their daily meeting, each bringing more troubling evidence of humanity's violent nature. They had discovered wrestling shows, action movies, first-person shooter games, and even something called paintball, where humans practiced combat while marking their targets with colored projectiles. Most concerning, Observer Blue reported, is their obsession with something called superheroes. They create mythological warriors with impossible powers, clearly showing their species' highest aspirations. Tom Baker, still Earth's designated contact with the alien observers, tried desperately to explain during their weekly communication session. You don't understand, he said through the video link. These are all forms of entertainment. They're not real. We create these stories for fun, to explore ideas and imagination. Imagination. Director White's translator struggled with the concept. You mean you imagine even more violence than what already exists? No, Tom sighed. We imagine all sorts of things. Look, let me show you something different. He sent them links to cooking shows, gardening programs, and romantic comedies. The observers watched in confusion. Clearly these are about survival training, Yellow concluded, learning to find food, create camouflage bases, and establish mating bonds for warrior breeding programs. Tom resisted the urge to bang his head against his desk. That's not. Those are about enjoying life, about creativity and relationships. Relationships. Director White seemed puzzled. You mean tactical alliances. The misunderstandings continued to pile up. When the observers discovered video games like The Sims or Stardew Valley, they saw them as complex military simulations about resource management and base building. Even shows about baking competitions were interpreted as trials of precision and endurance under pressure. Their entire entertainment system is focused on combat preparation. Director White concluded in his report to the Council. Every form of media either documents battles, simulates warfare, or trains for survival situations. The quarantine must not only continue but be strengthened. Back on Earth, Tom met with world leaders to discuss the situation. They're interpreting everything through a lens of warfare, he explained. Our movies, games, sports, they see it all as proof that we're dangerous. But surely they must have entertainment on their worlds too. One leader asked. Their species evolved differently, Tom replied. They've never known conflict. They can't understand that we can depict violence in our media while choosing peace in our lives. As the meeting ended, news arrived that the Council had approved additional monitoring stations around Earth. The aliens' fear of humanity's warrior nature had only grown stronger, even as they completely misunderstood the creative spirit that drove human entertainment. In orbit, Observer Yellow started another day of monitoring, unaware that he was watching human imagination at work rather than the battle-obsessed culture he feared. The divide between human creativity and alien understanding grew wider with each passing day. The cargo ship Star Whisper drifted peacefully through space just outside Earth's quarantine zone. Its crew of peaceful Centaurians were transporting medical supplies between star systems, following their usual route that carefully avoided the dangerous human solar system. Captain Purple, a tall being with shimmering scales, checked their course one more time. Keep us well away from the quarantine boundary, he instructed his navigator. We don't want to risk attracting the humans' attention. But fate had other plans. 3 black ships suddenly appeared from behind a small asteroid cluster. Their hulls were scared and their weapons were already charging. Space pirates, outcasts from various peaceful species who had chosen to embrace violence, making them feared throughout the galaxy. Give us your cargo, a rough voice demanded over the communications channel. Resist, and we'll take your ship too. The Centaurians, like most galactic species, had no weapons on their vessel. Their civilization had evolved beyond violence thousands of years ago. They could only watch in horror as the pirates began cutting into their hull. Inside Earth's quarantine zone, the United States Space Force vessel, Defender, was on routine patrol when their sensors picked up the disturbance. Captain, the sensor operator called out, we're detecting weapons fire just outside the barrier. Looks like a civilian ship under attack. Captain James of the Defender studied the readings. The quarantine prevented them from leaving their solar system, but they could clearly see the attack happening just beyond their reach. Send a message to command, he ordered, and get me Tom Baker. Within minutes, Tom was connected to the Defender's bridge from his office on Earth. After a quick briefing, he made a decision that would change humanity's relationship with the galaxy. Save them, Tom said simply. We'll deal with the diplomatic consequences later. The Defender's engines roared to life. As they approached the quarantine barrier, they sent a powerful electromagnetic pulse that temporarily disrupted the alien technology. For just 30 seconds, they had a window to slip through. On the Star Whisper, things were getting desperate. The pirates had breached the outer hull, and the crew was huddled in the central chamber, preparing to surrender. Suddenly, their ship's sensors detected a new vessel approaching at high speed. Unknown ship design. The navigator reported nervously. It's coming from Earth. The Defender burst through the disrupted barrier, its warning sirens blaring. This is Captain James of the Earth vessel Defender. His voice boomed across all channels. Stop your attack immediately. The pirates, having never encountered humans before, laughed. They had 3 ships to 1, but they didn't understand what they were facing. Launch the Marines, Captain James ordered. Space-suited figures shot out from the Defender's launch bays, using jetpacks to cross the void between ships. These were trained Space Force Marines, experts in zero-gravity combat. But they weren't aiming to kill. With precision and skill, The Marines disabled the pirates' weapon systems and breached their hulls at strategic points. Using non-lethal tactics, stun weapons, and capture nets, they systematically secured each pirate vessel. The Centaurian crew watched in amazement. These supposed violent warriors were fighting with remarkable restraint, taking care not to seriously harm even their enemies. Within 20 minutes, all 3 pirate ships were secured. The Marines had captured the criminals with minimal injuries and no deaths. "Your ship is safe now," Captain James told the astonished Centaurians. "We'll escort you until Council forces arrive." The news spread quickly across galactic communications channels. A human warship had broken quarantine, but not to attack. They had risked punishment to save a civilian vessel, using controlled force to capture pirates that had been terrorizing peaceful shipping lanes for months. In the council chamber, the aliens watched the recorded footage in stunned silence. They saw humans fighting, yes, but fighting to protect others, with discipline and restraint they hadn't thought possible from violent warriors. "Perhaps," whispered one council member, "we have misunderstood these humans." Back on the Defender, Captain James was already preparing for the diplomatic storm that would follow. But as he watched his Marines helping repair the Centaurian vessel, he knew they had made the right choice. Sometimes it takes an act of carefully controlled violence to prove you're actually dedicated to peace. The Great Council chamber buzzed with excited discussion. Hundreds of alien representatives watched the rescue footage for the 20th time on the massive display screens. They paid special attention to how the human Marines disabled the pirate ships without killing anyone. "Look at their precision," Council Leader Gold noted, his crystalline form glowing with interest. "They had the power to destroy, yet they chose to capture." Director White, who had been so afraid of humans before, floated nervously in front of the council. We may have made some mistakes in our assessment," he admitted. The screens now showed the human Marines helping repair the damaged Centaurian ship. Their careful movements and gentle handling of the scared alien crew contradicted everything the Council had believed about humanity's violent nature. Captain Purple of the Star Whisper addressed the Council next. "They could have ignored our distress call. The quarantine gave them every reason to stay away. Instead, they risked punishment to save us." Tom Baker, invited to speak to the full council for the first time, stood calmly at the center of the chamber. The aliens watched him carefully, no longer seeing a deceptive warrior, but perhaps something more complex. "Let me show you something," Tom said, activating his own presentation. "These are Earth's rules of warfare." The screens displayed the Geneva Conventions and various peace treaties. The aliens leaned forward, fascinated by the concept of putting limits on combat. "You make rules for fighting?" Ambassador Green asked, confused. "Why restrict your warrior abilities?" "Because the goal isn't to destroy," Tom explained. "Throughout human history, we've learned that violence should be the last resort, used only to protect and defend." He showed them more footage. Rescue workers saving people from disasters, police officers protecting civilians, soldiers building bridges in flood-hit areas, and peacekeepers delivering aid in conflict zones. "Yes, humans can fight," Tom continued. "We train for it because we know there are threats in the universe, as your own people learned from those pirates. But fighting isn't our purpose. Protection is." The council members whispered among themselves. They watched scenes of human firefighters rushing into burning buildings, Coast Guard ships braving storms to save stranded sailors, and emergency workers helping after natural disasters. They risked their lives to save others. Ambassador Blue wondered aloud. "Even strangers." "Especially strangers," Tom replied. "That's what you've misunderstood about us. Our capacity for violence exists to protect those who cannot protect themselves." Director White's color shifted to a thoughtful blue. "The combat sports we saw are about discipline, respect, and self-control," Tom finished. "The winner isn't the one who hurts their opponent the most, but the one who shows the most skill while following strict rules." The council leader raised all 4 appendages for silence. "We have watched humans for months, seeing only what we feared. Perhaps it is time we looked with new eyes. More footage played. Human children helping injured animals, volunteers at food banks, doctors working in disaster zones, and peaceful protesters standing up for others' rights. Their warriors serve as protectors, the council leader observed. Their strength exists not for conquest, but for defense. We have judged them by our own fears rather than their actions. Tom smiled. Humans aren't perfect. We had a long history of violence, yes, but we've learned from it. We've grown. Our greatest heroes aren't those who destroy, but those who save. The chamber was quiet for a long moment. Finally, Ambassador Green spoke up. I move that we reconsider the quarantine. Not because humans aren't dangerous. They clearly are, but because they use that danger to protect rather than harm. We feared their warrior nature, the council leader said, but failed to see the wisdom and restraint that guides it. Perhaps, he paused thoughtfully, perhaps the galaxy needs protectors as well as peacekeepers. As the council began their formal deliberations, Tom watched with hope. The rescue of one alien ship had done what months of diplomatic talks couldn't. It had shown the true nature of humanity not through words, but through actions. Sometimes the best way to prove you're not just a warrior race is to show how and why you fight. The emergency alarms in the council chamber hadn't stopped ringing for 3 days. Red lights flashed as representatives from dozens of worlds reported the same terrible news. The swarm was coming. Another peaceful colony lost. Ambassador Green announced, his color faded with exhaustion. The swarm shows no interest in communication. They simply take what they want and destroy everything else. The swarm, a recently discovered species from the galaxy's outer rim, had no interest in diplomacy. They were pure consumers, stripping planets bare of resources and moving on. Against them, the peaceful species of the Galactic Council had no defense. 6 worlds lost in 2 weeks, the council leader said grimly. Our peaceful ways have left us unable to fight back. We never needed weapons, until now. Director White, who had been quietly watching the reports, finally spoke up. There might be one option left. Every eye in the chamber turned to him. They all knew what he meant. The humans. Ambassador Blue asked nervously. But they're quarantined. They're dangerous. Yes. Director White replied. They're dangerous. And right now, we need dangerous. Tom Baker was called to an emergency council session. As he entered the chamber, he noticed the fear in the alien representatives' postures. But for the first time, that fear wasn't directed at humanity. The situation is grave, the council leader explained, showing holographic maps of the swarm's advance. They've destroyed every defense we've tried. Our ships can't stop them. Our barriers can't hold them. We need warriors, Tom finished quietly. Yes, the council leader's crystalline form dimmed. We who judged humanity for their warrior nature now find ourselves in need of exactly that nature. Tom studied the tactical displays. The swarm's ships were massive biological vessels that consumed everything in their path. Their numbers were overwhelming. I'll need to consult with Earth's governments, Tom said. But first, tell me everything you know about the swarm. Hours later, Tom stood before the United Nations Security Council, explaining the situation. The room was silent as he finished his report. They're asking for our help, one representative asked. The same people who quarantined us for being too violent. Yes, Tom replied, because they've realized that sometimes protection requires force. The question is, will we prove them right about humanity's violent nature, or show them what it truly means to be warriors who protect? The debate was short. Within hours, Earth's response was ready. Back in the council chamber, Tom addressed the gathered representatives. Earth has made its decision. We will help. The aliens watched in amazement as Tom displayed Earth's initial battle plans. Instead of pure aggression, the strategies focused on protecting civilian worlds while containing the swarm's advance. Our first priority will be evacuating threatened planets, Tom explained. Then we'll establish defensive lines to stop their expansion. Only after civilians are safe will we consider offensive operations. You would protect our people first, Ambassador Green asked, surprised, before attacking the enemy. That's what warriors do, Tom replied simply. At least, that's what human warriors do. We fight to protect, not just to destroy. The Council watched as Earth's military forces began mobilizing. Ships that had been confined by the quarantine were now being prepared for war. But these weren't mindless warriors seeking battle. These were trained professionals, bringing decades of peacekeeping experience to protect a galaxy that had feared them. There will be conditions, Tom continued. Earth will require full military autonomy. We fight by our own rules. The same rules you once feared. No unnecessary casualties. No excessive force. Protection of civilians above all else. The Council leader raised his appendages in agreement. The quarantine is officially lifted. Humanity is no longer judged as a warrior race to be feared, but as protectors to be welcomed. As Tom left the chamber to coordinate with Earth's military command, he heard the aliens discussing among themselves. They had feared humanity's warrior nature for so long, only to discover that sometimes the best protectors are those who know how to fight but choose when not to. The true test of humanity's nature was about to begin, not through their capacity for violence, but through their ability to use that capacity wisely in defense of others. The massive viewing screen in the Council chamber showed hundreds of Earth ships moving in perfect formation. Each ship carried not just weapons, but huge cargo bays filled with evacuation supplies and medical equipment. Remarkable, Ambassador Green whispered, watching human crews help scared alien civilians board rescue ships. They're so gentle with the refugees, yet so fierce in battle. The war against the swarm had been raging for 3 weeks, but it wasn't the kind of war the Council had expected from their supposedly violent human allies. The first thing Earth's forces had done was evacuate 5 threatened worlds. While the Council had expected the humans to immediately attack the swarm, humanity's commanders had insisted on saving civilians first. The swarm is attacking the Centauri colony, an observer called out. On the screen, 3 massive swarm ships approached a peaceful settlement. But between them and their target, a single human vessel appeared. This is Captain James of the Earth Defense Force. His calm voice transmitted across all channels. You will not harm these people. The swarm ships, each 5 times larger than the human vessel, continued their advance. They had never bothered with warnings or threats. They simply consumed. What happened next amazed the watching Council. The human ship didn't just attack. Instead, it executed a complex series of maneuvers, drawing the swarm ships away from the colony using careful tactics and precise movements. They're leading the swarm into a trap, Director White realized, watching other human ships move into position, not to destroy them, but to capture them. The humans had studied the swarm carefully. Instead of just fighting, they had learned. They discovered that the swarm ships could be contained using special energy fields. Rather than killing their enemy, they were working to stop them without destruction. Tom Baker stood with the Council leader, explaining the human strategy. We've learned that the swarm operates on pure instinct. They're not evil. They're just following their nature. So we're trying to find a way to redirect them, not exterminate them. The Council leader's crystalline form glowed with understanding. You seek to protect not only us, but also your enemy. When possible, yes, Tom replied. Violence is our last resort, not our first choice. The war continued, but not like any war the galaxy had seen before. Human ships would draw swarm vessels away from populated areas. Their marines would evacuate threatened colonies with incredible speed and efficiency. Their scientists worked to understand the swarm's biology, looking for peaceful solutions. Finally, after 2 months of careful strategy, the humans made their breakthrough. They found a way to communicate with the swarm using chemical signals, discovering that the species wasn't naturally violent. They were simply desperate for specific resources to survive. We can help them find these resources in uninhabited systems, Tom explained to the council. There's no need for either side to die. We can find a solution that works for everyone. The council chamber was silent as they watched the first successful negotiation with the swarm. Through human translators, a peace deal was arranged. The swarm would be guided to uninhabited, resource-rich worlds, ending their threat to populated systems. We feared your warrior nature, the council leader said to Tom afterward, but we didn't understand what it truly meant. You fight not because you love violence, but because you're willing to defend others. And even then, you look for peaceful solutions. Humanity learned its lessons about war long ago, Tom replied. We know how to fight because we must. But we also know that true strength lies in knowing when not to fight, and in protecting all life, even those who seem to be our enemies. The council officially recorded a new classification for humanity in their records, a species capable of great power, guided by greater wisdom. Warriors not of destruction, but of protection. Defenders of peace through strength and compassion. As the emergency ended and reconstruction began, human ships helped rebuild destroyed colonies. Their Marines, who had fought so effectively, now worked to restore homes and communities. They had proved themselves to be exactly what the galaxy needed, not mindless warriors, but careful protectors who used their strength to defend the peace. The quarantine that had started with fear ended in understanding. Humanity had shown that being strong didn't mean being violent, and that true warriors fight not for glory, but for the safety and peace of others.